This was the case. Maybe it was the case last Monday. I probably should have looked this up before I came on. But now we're into the thing where we got to have 2 Monday night games, not just one Monday night game, but we got to have 2 of them. But yet it doesn't seem like every Monday that we have 2 games instead of 1. Sometimes we just have 1, then we have 2. It's all over the place, right? It's like the temperature this time of year. Up, down, all over the place. But last night, it was one of those sports viewing orgies, if you will, right? You got a little of everything going on. You got the Pacers in the preseason. You got baseball, and then not 1 but 2 Monday night games. And I did go to the Pacers game last night. And I will bring that up later. We'll go over a little of that. Scott Agnes is going to join us on the show today. And then there's baseball. And again, I'm a diehard. I mean, I've got the hat. I wore it the other day. I've been a diehard Blue Jays fan now for almost 7 weeks. And, dyed in the wool, live, die every pitch. I mean, yeah, sure. Mid-'80s, I was all in on the Blue Jays. Early 90s, all in on the Blue Jays. Baseball, my fandom kind of waned a little bit. But this postseason, I've gotten kind of into it again. I mean, I'm being facetious on my Blue Jays, but that's who I'm rooting for. So you had that going on. I was following that, and then, the Mariners, I don't know what's going on there. They've gone crazy with their bats. But the big focus, by the time I got home from the Pacer game and everything else, both games were wrapping up. And I thought it was an interesting glimpse as to where we are with the Colts. Talked about it yesterday, right off the top, the surreal nature, the incredulous nature by which I absorb the fact and let it sink in that the Colts, the Indianapolis Colts, are the number 1 seed in the AFC. We're not even a third of the way through it. I get it. But the best record in the NFL, right there at the top, Indianapolis Colts. And, I was thinking about what is it that has made this possible? There's a lot of things you can go to. And the defensive backfield is depleted with injury, and they're still going out and they're getting players where they can off other people's practice squads and everything else. And their pass rush seems inconsistent. And that's an area that I think it shows how hard it is to get that right in the National Football League, because Chris Ballard and the Colts have been, that has been a major point of emphasis for them. And yet still, while Laiatu Latu, when he was drafted and Ballard going into, hey, we got the best pass rusher in the league, and, laughing to anybody that would look and, all of that. And he shows glimpses and flashes, and DeForest Buckner's a really good player. And, they got some guys that are solid, but it's not a consistent pass rush. That's been an area of weakness or inconsistency. But as I'm watching last night, I'm watching Buffalo. And Josh Allen and that offense, which is proficient and efficient at times clicks on all cylinders. And even when it's not going on all cylinders, you're always under the expectation that Buffalo offense can jumpstart at any time because you've got Josh Allen under center. And I'm watching Atlanta with, Michael Penix, and again, inconsistent. Word of the day, like the temperature. Great certain parts of the day, then cools off. There are so many teams in the NFL right now that's what they look like. And Atlanta last night was able to, they looked very good defensively. They limited Allen. And they could control the game and the clock and the tempo because they could keep the ball on the ground. And that's the NFL and this cyclical back and forth theme of the day. One of the things in the NFL has been the priority of, or the importance of, the running game and having a good running back and controlling the ball on the ground. And we're back now. We're back to the point now where the running game is important. A couple of years ago, it was like, and I was as guilty as anyone of saying, look, The Colts are building a roster based on the trenches and a running back. It's like trying to build an NBA team in 2025 with Charles Oakley and Patrick Ewing. You know, the game has gotten away from that. But it's kind of come back now. The way this Colts team was built are like that favorite sweatshirt you had that, like, for a while there it was a little outdated, and now it's like retro and cool again. And I'm watching Atlanta, and I'm seeing the way that they're controlling the game on the ground and just keeping the ball out of Allen's hands a little bit and keeping him at bay. Then I go over to Chicago and Washington. You've got two quarterbacks that can run the football, that are dynamic because of the fact that if the pocket is collapsing, they can get themselves out and make plays. And I think the world of Jaden Daniels. I think he's a very good player. But and Caleb Williams is starting to come into his own a little bit. But again, inconsistency, right? But the thing that I noticed in watching those games is the light bulb went off for me. The epiphany was there. I don't know whether it was the foresight and the brilliance of Chris Ballard. I don't know whether it was just holding on to that sweatshirt long enough that it came back in vogue. But this team, this Colts team right now, is winning in the NFL in 2025 and off to the start they're off to because they are able to do the things that are in its simplistic form, almost elementary and at times archaic in football. But we've gotten away from the 400-yard passing, wild throwing all over the field, basketball on grass level NFL, and it's come back a little bit to the old school, which is win in the trenches and control the football. And as I was watching last night, I got to thinking about what I haven't seen this year from the Colts. And what I haven't seen this year from the Colts that I've seen with other teams in the league. And then I looked it up. And I was surprised. Not shocked, but surprised. Oh, wow. I guess maybe this was right before me and I didn't necessarily let it sink in. There is an area in the National Football League where the Colts are dead last. 32nd, dead last. You sit there and you scan through it. And you're going, where's Indianapolis? And you're rolling through and you're looking at teams like Baltimore. Teams that Cincinnati, Washington, San Francisco, Buffalo. Teams that we thought were going to be at the best. And yet the Colts are at the bottom of this particular list, 32nd out of 32. And that is number of times their quarterback has been sacked. So technically speaking, the Colts are first because you want to be last. This is like golf, right? Low score wins. They are protecting Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones is taking advantage of that by making all of the right throws, making the right decisions, and more importantly, showing the mental fortitude, the moxie to come back from when a drive doesn't go his way or a throw doesn't go his way, and resetting and coming back and being efficient and proficient at times. And then, of course, you add to that Jonathan Taylor is running the football and keeping it away from other teams and salting clock at the end of games. The recipe is very simple. You let Daniel Jones, you protect him. You let him make some throws here and there. You get out to a lead, and then you've got Jonathan Taylor there as your bell cow, and you know what? Try stopping that. Come and get us. And that line is playing to the point. And you've got, again, Ryan Kelly, who was a really good player and a really good citizen and all the things that you would want within your franchise, but it was not long ago when we were leading this show by talking about the fact that Ryan Kelly was open of saying, yeah, I was interested in re-signing, but the Colts told me that they'd rather wait and they're not ready to lock me in just yet. And at the time you thought, is Bortolini ready to be the center? Do they have the solidarity at line? I mean, that's an important piece. Ryan Kelly's been a quarterback of that offensive line for a long time when he's been healthy. And yet they make that plunge, and here they are, and that group is protecting Daniel Jones. And you know what group is not protecting their quarterback? You know what group you don't have to look very long when you look at number of sacks allowed in the National Football League? Number 1, New York Jets. That group is a dumpster fire. If Aaron Glenn is still holding that job by Thanksgiving, it'll surprise me. We've already seen, coaches in the NFL, coaching changes in the NFL. Oftentimes, everybody's waiting to be that first friend. Who's going to be the first coach fired? Who's going to be the first coach fired? And unfortunately, you don't want anybody to ever lose their job. But unfortunately, when that happens, then the dominoes start falling because it's like franchises like, well, okay, others have done it. Here we go. You would have to think Miami probably also in that mix. But Justin Fields is not being protected with the New York Jets. Part of that is on Justin Fields. Part of that's on Justin Fields. But the New York Jets, second, Tennessee. Rookie quarterback in Cam Ward. Part of that's on the quarterback. Holding on to the football too long. Not going through your reads. Number of different factors that come into play there. But Tennessee second in terms of sacks allowed. You don't have to go very far down. Right down the list, right there, fifth. The Los Angeles Chargers and Justin Herbert, who I think the world of. But the best medicine right now for the Colts and that defense might be going up against Justin Herbert and the LA Chargers. And that sounds crazy. Big arm talent, right? Justin Herbert's like the first quarterback where we heard about arm talent. But the Chargers are not protecting him. And that offensive line is porous, and you're able to get to Justin Herbert and interrupt and disrupt things and get him out of flow. And that may be the perfect medicine right now for a Colts defense that is in need of breaking out and feeling good about themselves. And I'm telling you, their pass rush is not incompetent, Indianapolis, but it's not what I think you want it to be considering the amount of investment in terms of time that they have put into it year in and year out. But it's a simple formula. Like the Colts are winning with a simple formula. They're protecting their quarterback, they're running the football, they're making smart plays when they need to, and they're protecting the football. They're not turning it over. Pretty simple formula. Can they maintain and sustain that? The more I think about it, and the more I look at it, and the more I analyze it, the more I'm starting to feel better about the Colts' chances on Sunday in Los Angeles against the Chargers. I think the only game so far that they played, and I'd have to go back and look at it when we make our weekly predictions. I think I might have predicted the Rams would beat the Colts. I can't remember. But that was the only game going into it that I thought to myself, okay, this is going to be an up. And I thought that about the Chargers. When the schedule came out, I looked at it and thought, that's going to be two tough games in L.A., the Rams and the Chargers. And yet, are there really games you look at that jump out at you and you say, that's going to be a tough one? No. The Chargers are one that you thought that was going to be a tough one. Now I look at it, and the more I'm looking into it, the more I'm trying to find reasons why the Colts won't win. It's unbelievable to me. Here we are, week 6, and we are searching for reasons why the Colts won't win a game, or week 7 or whatever it is now. I mean, they're 5-1, right? So week 7, I guess, technically, through 6. Now, I got to thinking about this as I woke up this morning. I woke up this morning, and there's something weird about that October sun. I think it has something to do with the humidity level or whatever. But anybody notice this? Am I the only one? Corbin Langenfelter is in for Eddie Garrison. Eddie's on vacation. He's down in Florida. He's got himself some Surfside down there. He's living large, whatever. Corbin, have you noticed that maybe it's just me? Maybe it's the power of suggestion. Maybe it's the thought process of the harvest sun in Indiana, the autumn, the corn husking and haunted houses and all that, right? But is it me, Corbin, and feel free to disagree with me? I think it has to do with the humidity levels is what I'm going with. The sunrise is more colorful and orange than it is in the dead of summer in October.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Like when the sun is beaming through, it's this radiant orange as opposed to just the yellow heat that you feel like in the middle of August. It's glorious, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's radiant. It's beautiful. Everything, like you just get up and you're like, let's go. And this morning I got up and it was this orange hue that was overcoming through the windows. Gorgeous, beautiful. And I thought to myself, this is right now being a sports fan in Central Indiana. Think about it. Sometimes I'm asking you people right now in Indianapolis, Indiana, if you're listening to my voice, or if you are Mo in Ohio, or if you are in Colorado. I know we got people that live out in Colorado that grew up in Indiana that listen to the program. Florida. Occasionally I get people from Florida that will message me, hey, we listen to the show because we're from Indiana. We want to know what's going on. No matter where you are right now, that orange radiant glow of a beautiful sunrise in October in Indianapolis, Indiana is representative right now of what it means to be a sports fan of the teams of Central Indiana. Think about this. I don't know that we've had it like this in a while, and sometimes I think that, like Ferris Bueller said, life moves too fast. You got to stop and look around every once in a while. And people need to do it right now. You have in college basketball the number one ranked team in the country in the preseason AP Top 25 right here, state of Indiana, in Purdue. Purdue since 2010 is Gonzaga, Kansas, Kentucky, Purdue, and Duke. 5. Those are the 5 schools in the last 16 years that have managed to be ranked number one in college basketball at some point in 5 consecutive seasons. And the Purdue Boilermakers right here, Central Indiana, number one in the country. College football. Now, I know that Notre Dame is not in Central Indiana, but it's kind of rooted in it because there's a huge fan base here. It's an Indiana school. And I know that Notre Dame got off to that slow start with 2 losses. But I'm telling you right now, they're one of the 10 best teams in college football, and I believe they're going to be in the college football playoff. I think Marcus Freeman can flat out coach. I think that they are starting to hit their stride. They got a young quarterback. Notre Dame, really good. And then, of course, arguably the best team in the country in college football is 52 miles south of here. The third-ranked, best ever ranking. We've talked a lot about it, Curt Cignetti in Indiana. And the best story in college football happening with Indiana. And the rest of the country that we're going to play for you coming up later in the show, they are in total disbelief over the Indiana Fighting Hoosiers. And the fact that it is still surreal because even the biggest of Indiana fans, my buddy Rob Whitaker is convinced Indiana could literally start tomorrow Ollie from Hoosiers at point guard. I'm talking today, not 19. I'm talking today, Ollie. Late 50s, early 60s-year-old Ollie. He could start a point guard for Indiana, and Rob Whitaker would send me a text like, no, I'm telling you, I think he's pretty good. I like this team's special. And Rob Whitaker is like so many of the guys I grew up with as an Indiana fan that are dyed-in-the-wool, run through a brick wall for Indiana athletics. And even Rob Whitaker, when I talked to him, was like, I still can't believe they went in there and absolutely out-Oregon, outsped Oregon, punched him in the mouth, sent a statement to the rest of the college football world. You better wake up now and take it for real. This is not Timu, Alabama. This is legitimate Indiana. Indiana right now Ohio State is really good. I'm going to take Ohio State out of the equation. Outside of Indiana may be the best team in the country. I'm not kidding you. Miami's good. Okay. Ohio State, again, I'm taking Ohio State out of the equation. Ohio State's the best team in the country, I realize. But we're going to say Indiana, right? Then you've got last night the Pacers. And I'm at the Pacers game. And I'm intrigued by the center by committee variation of the Pacers. And I want to see between James Wiseman and Isaiah Jackson and Jay Huff, like which one's the guy. And it's a work in progress for certain because I know that Indiana wants to play at a fast pace, and that is the one area, and I don't think that their long-term center is on the roster right now. I really don't believe that. I think that you go through this year, and then you find out who your guy is going to be. But that's up to Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan and Rick Carlisle. For this year, I'm intrigued by those three centers, but I have to admit last night I was watching it thinking, please tell me there's more here. But it's the preseason. And Benedict Mathurin was the big story because Benedict Mathurin was hitting everything. He's pulling up from three. He's knocking it down. He's mid-range game. He's knocking it down. He didn't miss a shot in the second quarter. He goes for 31. And I'm thinking to myself, here we go. Now, we can talk about the fact that that does come with a little bit of a curveball variation of potential issue, because if Benedict Mathurin has this massive year, then what do you do? Because it feels to me like Benedict Mathurin is playing his way into a really lucrative deal with, like, the Washington Wizards. Or that some other team is going to come and say, this is our 22-point-per-game guy. We're going to give him a big-time deal, and they're going to price themselves above and beyond what Indiana is able to do, because the Pacers are going to, of course, you got Nembhard, you got Nesmith, you're probably going to have to go out and get a center, etc. I mean, there's a lot, Siakam, there's a lot of money tied up in other areas. But nonetheless, as I'm watching the Pacers last night, and I go walk around during the half, met Brandon, really good dude. We're standing there going through the gift shop, and they've got all this stuff that's on sale, and it was cool. And it's just now sinking in. I'm like, wow, they really were in the finals. So here you have, in the NBA, a team that was an Eastern Conference champion, that represented the Eastern Conference, that was a half away from winning the NBA title 3 months ago. And even though they're down Tyrese Halliburton, and even though Miles Turner is now in Milwaukee, there is this optimism and this euphoria about the Pacers, because you have to believe in that vision, and they've earned the right for us to believe in their vision of who and what they can be. So I'm like, okay, college basketball, check. Indiana, epicenter, Purdue, number one. College football, check. Indiana, the talk of college football. People nationwide asking themselves, who is this Cignetti guy? What is this? And I realize that happened last year as well. But the reality now that last year was no fluke, and Indiana is here atop the college football world, where everything is lined up for them to be able to do it in the NIL portal world, and Indiana takes advantage more than anybody else and puts themselves right in the epicenter. And the Colts being the best team in the AFC, and the Pacers being the Eastern Conference reigning champions, that, I realize a couple of years ago, the Pacers said to us, Kevin Pritchard, Chad Buchanan, Rick Carlisle, they said to the fan base, and it wasn't long ago, they said, guys, we just need you to be patient. We've traded Domas Sabonis. We have a young player in Halliburton that we like. We're starting here. We're going to build this thing up, and we're going to ask you to be patient with us. And you know what? It paid off. And for that reason, this year, there's going to be some adjustment and some acclimation to the fact of still absorbing how close it was, but yet how far. And with Halliburton out and Turner in Milwaukee. But they've earned the benefit of the doubt of us saying, we're on board, we'll be patient for one more year. Because last time you asked for our patience, you arrived even faster than we expected it to happen. So it is literally this glorious time in Central Indiana, and we should soak it all in. We should embrace it. We should live in the moment. We should enjoy the glorious hue of that orange sunrise. It's not a sunset. It's a sunrise that's taking place right now of sports in Central Indiana, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it, and I'm blessed and fortunate to have this job to share it with all of you and talk about it every single day. And one of the things we're going to talk about is the fact that the number one team in the land in college basketball is right here just north of us with Purdue, and that's why the voice of the Boilermakers, Rob Blackman, going to join us on the other side. Stephen Holder today will play for you some of the comments nationally about Curt Cignetti and the fact that Cignetti, when it comes to Penn State, there might be a reprieve for Indiana, but it could come at the cost of other fans within Indianapolis. We'll get to all of it over the course of today. Rob Blackman next. Stephen Holder coming up, 1 o'clock today. By the way, Dave says, Jake, I can't believe you didn't mention the Fever. I was just talking about the teams that are in season right now. You got, and I realize, Purdue hasn't started yet, but I'm saying you got the Pacers getting ready to start. You've got Indiana in season. You've got the Colts in season. And you've got the number one team in college basketball, the Purdue Boilermakers, joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. He is the radio play-by-play voice of the Purdue Boilermaker basketball program. You hear him on the football broadcast as well. And he shares a birthday with what is destined to be eventually a national holiday because we have the same birthday. Rob Blackman joining me on the show. Rob, how are you?
That's right. Jake, Rob, and Stingray Rob of IndyCar racing fame, all September 3rd birthdays.
You know who else, by the way, Rob? We probably should have stopped there while we're ahead. Charlie Sheen as well, a September 3rd birthday, I believe.
No way. Have you watched the documentary on Charlie Sheen
So,
yet?
Interesting you mentioned that. I caught probably the last third of it because Shannon was watching it, and I got over to her house, and I'm like, what are we watching here? And then, it was like this vortex you couldn't get out of once you start watching it. And I will say, Charlie Sheen actually, so I assume you've seen the documentary, correct?
Yes, I have, yes.
He's a bit of a wild lifestyle. One of the things that I don't know if this was covered in the documentary, but I've got to give Charlie Sheen his flowers here. One of the things he did, Rob, that I always thought was cool was, do you remember the time when he bought the entire left field seats at Dodger Stadium?
I had forgotten about that, but yes, now that you bring it up, yes.
He always wanted to get a home run ball, so he bought the entire left field seats and just sat by himself, and I don't think anybody hit a homer, right?
No, I think that was the story, right? That was ended up being the whole the storyline was the fact that no one ever hit a home run that day.
Knowing Charlie Sheen, he probably did that when they were playing the Giants to try to get a Barry Bonds ball and didn't think about the fact that he should have bought it in right field instead of left, right? You know what I mean?
Left-handed hitter.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's talk about this, Rob. I don't think it's any big surprise that Matt Painter's group is ranked number one. And I think one of the things, and we talked about this with DeCourcy, but you see it up close and personal. One of the things about Purdue basketball, Rob, to me, that makes this so both special and impressive is because of the experience. Not that they're not great players that Purdue has, but the challenge in today's world of keeping a unit together and having them buy in and continue to not search greener pastures elsewhere. I'm not saying they're not getting NIL money, but you get what I'm saying there. What is it about Purdue basketball that so far to this point has been able to buck the trend of its mainline players constantly coming and going?
Yeah, so, I've heard Matt Painter speak on this numerous times this summer because that's been a pretty popular question, as you might imagine. And I also heard both Trey Kaufman-Renn and Braden Smith speak to this at Media Day last week, the Big Ten Media Day. And the word they all kept using was family. And I know sometimes that can sound a bit hokey because I understand that every team atmosphere is trying to make it family-like. But they really do feel like they're part of a family and that it goes further than just basketball and what happens on the court. And there is something to be said for having a coaching staff and an administration that truly believes in what's best for you, as Matt Painter likes to say, once the ball stops bouncing. Because as most of our guys figure out, eventually that ball does stop bouncing. You're going to have to do something else in life besides play basketball. So that's the word that seems to be thrown around a lot, and I think it is fair. I think it certainly is appropriate. That it is a family atmosphere, that once you're there, you really feel like you're a part of something bigger than just basketball. Now, Matt Painter has also been very clear that, Purdue's never had, in this modern day now, transfer portal stuff, Purdue has never had a starter that has entered the portal. Now, we've had some guys that played some minutes and played off the bench, but as far as a guy that was in the regular starting lineup, they've never left. So obviously there's something about coming to Purdue and, not only having a chance to play, but having a chance to, again, put yourself in a position where you can do something with your life when basketball is all said and done. So certainly, you brought it up there, you kind of hinted at it, Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn and Fletcher Lawyer, I am certain they had opportunities this offseason to go play somewhere else and probably make a little bit more money, if not a lot more money than they're making at Purdue. But They certainly enjoy where they're at. They love being Purdue basketball players, and again, they feel like they're part of something bigger than just basketball. So that is, at least with this group of guys, and at least the guys we've seen here in the last really 10 or 12 years or so, that's been something that's been very important to them.
What would you say is Charlie Sheen's signature role, Rob?
Oh, well, here's the problem. This one will be a little off the wall because it's one of my all-time favorite movies. But so me personally, I go with Young Guns.
Okay.
And I know he gets killed in Young Guns. I understand that, but that's one of my all-time favorite movies. So when I think Charlie Sheen, that is always the first movie that comes to my mind.
Here's what's funny for me. I mean, Major League, like I look at his list and I'm like, oh gosh, Major League, like how do you forget, Ricky Vaughn, right? But
yes, absolutely.
But probably because it was the first time I kind of was introduced to him, even though it was a cameo that was very brief, Ferris Bueller's Day Off jumps out at me. I know that's crazy. And obviously Platoon is the most decorated, pardon the pun, movie that he was in. And then 2.5 Men goes without saying if you're doing TV. But, would it be Major League? Is that what the general population would say, you think, or Platoon?
No, I think Major League would be especially the audience that's listening to us right now. But it's interesting. You really do need to watch the documentary, Jake, because they talk specifically about his role in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and really what a breakthrough point it was for him in his career. I'm not going to ruin it for you, but you really do need to watch the documentary because that's something they spend I don't know, a good 4 or 5 minutes talking about.
By the way, just so that we're clear, Rob, in terms of the audience that's listening to us right now, that's my mom. That's basically it. Just so you know.
I know the feeling. Trust me.
Hey, what new faces? So just for example, if Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer and, obviously Trey Kaufman-Renn, I mean, if that's your Major League 2.5 Men Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? Bottom line is Charlie Sheen had other movies where there were complementary roles. Give me a player or two that are new cast members to Purdue that you think actually can have complementary role or even become almost a starring role for the Boilers this year that we may not be familiar with going into it.
Well, I think the general fan base is going to say Omer Meyer. And while I certainly believe, yes, he's going to be a guy that can help this team eventually, he's the freshman from Tel Aviv, Israel, who spent this past season playing for Team Israel in the FIBA games. And he certainly looks the part, make no mistake about it. I do think the most important new piece is going to be Oscar Clough. He's a young man transferred in from South Dakota State, played at 2 seasons at Washington State before that, 2 seasons of junior college before that. So he's a veteran guy, been around the block, double-double last year, averaged a double-double for South Dakota State, and was, for those that follow this kind of stuff, he was picked as the number 1 overall transfer portal of all the transfer guys this past offseason by a number of publications. So he's going to really help for 2 reasons. Number 1, his rebounding, it will be much needed. 2 seasons ago when Purdue goes all the way to the national championship game, Purdue was the second best rebounding team in the country at about plus 11.5, 11.6, somewhere in there per game. Last year that number was down to about 1.5 a game, plus 1.5. So Oscar Clough's going to really help shore up the rebounding. And the second thing he's going to do is offer Purdue some interior defense. Now, look, Daniel Jacobson is back. He's 7'4", played only 1 game last year because he broke his foot in that game and then didn't get to play the rest of the season. So he's going to help in that role, but so will Oscar Clough, who's really an underrated interior post defender. Purdue had the worst 2-point defensive percentage defense in the country last year. Think about that. They were the worst in the nation of every Division I team at 2-point field goal percentage, which meant obviously everyone's getting to the rim and finishing with either layups or dunks. So that's never good. So those are the 2 areas that absolutely had to be shored up. Rebounding and defensive field goal percentage in the paint, and that's where Oscar Clough, I think, is going to really make the biggest splash for Purdue.
By the way, I've not seen Young Guns, and you already spoiled it to me that Charlie Sheen dies early. Is that a critical part of the movie? Did you waste the whole thing for me?
Well, yeah, it's critical, but you haven't seen Young Guns?
I don't think I have. I don't think I have.
One of the greatest films ever made.
I was reading a list just the other day that had Sound of Music, Wizard of Oz, Young Guns, right there, top 3, right? Great films of all time.
Yeah, you haven't seen The Wizard of Oz?
No, I'm being sarcastic. You're saying it's one of the great films of all time. I believe personally, Rob, this goes back to one of my great radio segments of all time that I'm shocked didn't win me a Marconi. I personally believe, I did an entire segment on this one time. Derek Schultz and I got into a furious debate and argument on this, didn't talk to each other for 6 months. It was the best 6 months of my life. I believe that The Wizard of Oz is the most widely is the movie that has been seen by the highest percentage of living Americans. Your thoughts?
Living Americans, I would say that's probably correct. I would say if you included those that are living and those deceased, Gone with the Wind might actually take the honors. But, yeah, I would say living Americans is probably in
the thing about Wizard of Oz is, like, it's one of those movies, though, that most people, you can't even remember the first time you've seen it. You're just like, I don't know, I've seen it 100 times. You know what I mean?
Totally agree. But let's not get sidetracked here. I am thoroughly disappointed you have not seen Young Guns.
I tried to throw you off the scent there of you're aghast of horror with this. Hey, I want to get back into real quick talking about Jacobson. And, you mentioned the fact that a year ago, Daniel Jacobson to me is fascinating because we so often, Rob, think of guys as who it is that they're replacing. So you look at him and you go, well, they had Zach Edey and now Jacobson, they got another 7'4" guy, and here goes Matt Painter again. But to me, he looked like, and I'm not saying Zach Edey wasn't a remarkably fluid player for his size, because he was, but he wasn't early on. Jacobson, to me, appears to have a natural fluidity about him from the get-go that we have not seen before. Am I off base there? What kind of a player or what kind of use will they try to involve him with?
Yeah, certainly more fluid, I think, just as a guy that doesn't play like he's 7'4".
Right.
Can step out and shoot the three, has done that consistently in practice. That's obviously something Zach Edey never did. Now, it's ironic that Zach's doing that in the NBA now, but he made only one three-point basket his whole Purdue career. And also very light and nimble on his feet is Daniel Jacobson. That's what makes him such a good rim protector. Certainly not as physical as Zach Edey, not even close to the physicality that Zach Edey had in the low post. But nimble on his feet, real good sense of timing when it comes to blocking shots. Really good sense for that. So, again, that's where Purdue's going to be looking for help in those areas, as I mentioned earlier with Oscar Clough. That's where Daniel Jacobson is really going to help out. But, yes, I would agree. Yes, both are, Zach, 7'4", Daniel, 7'4". Everyone wants just to make the automatic comparison that they're one and the same. When you're right, they're two really very different players.
Lastly, Rob, before we let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the football side of things, because obviously you work on that broadcast as well. Tough one at Minnesota. I thought actually Purdue kind of had that one. It got away from them a little bit. What areas, I guess, have, even though I realize, Barry Odom's group's lost 4 in a row, but I do think that they seem sound. You know what I mean? I think they just seem like a group that is a little more disciplined than what we saw a year ago. The area that they need to really shore up here before they go into Northwestern and then take on Rutgers.
Well, if you want one answer, it would be turnovers. Purdue is -10 in the turnover game right now, and that's through 6 games. It's impossible to win in the Big Ten when you're -10 on the season. Purdue has only 2 takeaways defensively, 1 interception, 1 fumble recovery. As crazy as that sounds, we're through 6 games now. But would be the one area that absolutely, if Purdue could just flip the script in the turnover game, even in, say, this upcoming game against Northwestern, you feel pretty good that Purdue could win. Watching that game and with my own 2 eyes on Saturday night in Minnesota, I thoroughly felt like Purdue was the better team. They held Minnesota to just 30 yards rushing, and this is a Minnesota team that makes its living by running the football. Purdue was able to run the football themselves. Purdue marched the ball up and down the field all game long, quite frankly. And other than really 2 offensive series for Minnesota, the Gophers didn't do anything offensively. So I felt like Purdue was the better team, but hey, at the end of the day, it's all about what the final score is. Forget who the better team was. But that would be, yes, if the question is what's the one thing, you start right there with turnovers. If Purdue could just even get even in the turnover game, I do feel like Purdue still has 2 or 3 wins left on the schedule in front of them here.
Again, Purdue #1 in college basketball, college football for the Boilermakers. It is upcoming at Northwestern this weekend. Rob, appreciate the time as always, man.
Yes. Now go run Young Guns tonight, please.
I will. I will. I'll head right over to Blockbuster on my way home.
Yes, do that.
I'll even rewind, right?
Don't be fined, please. Rewind.
That's right. All right, Rob, appreciate it. Rob Blackman joining us on the program. We come back. I mentioned in college football, Kurt Cignetti has people talking, and not necessarily favorably all the time, and who might be suddenly perking some ears in State College about Penn State when it comes to the state of Indiana. I'll explain next. Thank you to Rob Blackman for his time. Also appreciate, by the way, the following tweet that was sent to me from John. Hey, Jake, opening segment was so good. You've got a way with putting things in perspective without sounding fake or forced. Wishing you continued success and good health. John, I appreciate that very much. I am both probably fake and forced, depending on who you ask. But I don't know. Corbin, what do you think? Eddie is typically the guy that has to spend 3 hours a day with me, and you are now in here. Corbin Langenfelter, by the way, who is also the master control operator and producer for the IndyCar radio network. But typically when people, if my name comes up, you tell them that I'm fake and forced, right?
Sure.
So, John, I'm glad I fooled you. No, I appreciate the kind words. Paul Feinbaum is a guy that has obviously been a long-time college football, mostly SEC honk. I like Feinbaum. I think he does a good job, but he is rooted in the Southeast. He has long been, and I certainly understand it, an advocate for the strength of the SEC. And I think that he is slow to the party of accepting and acknowledging that Indiana is here, and Indiana perhaps might be here to stay. But I found this interesting. He was on with Matt Berry, the Matt Berry Show, which is presented by Allstate on ESPN, where they talk college football. And Feinbaum has been, I'll say, a skeptic when it comes to Curt Cignetti, and acknowledging that Indiana and what they did last year might not have been a flash-in-the-pan fluke, but might, in fact, not being fake and forced, but might be for real. And he was asked, was Paul Feinbaum, about Curt Cignetti, and notably was asked, basically Matt Berry said, look, you don't like the guy, do you? And Feinbaum had the following to say.
No. I mean, the answer is pretty simple. I think you know me. I shoot straight. I mean, I respect him to no end, but absolutely. He's brash. He's over the top. He's had the last laugh, which is a really great attribute for somebody who is successful. And he's probably laughing right now, watching this, going, the guy with no hair gave me no shot. He laughed at me, and look who's got the laugh now. Indiana has absolutely nothing going for it, or had nothing going for it until Cignetti got there. And we can sit here the rest of the afternoon and try to find more reasons, but it comes down to him. It's that simple.
And that's the thing that to me is curious. For Feinbaum to finally acknowledge Cignetti and say, look, I don't like him. He's brash. He's in your face. He's arrogant. He's all those things, but he does win. And he is the reason Indiana has turned this around. And that's significant to me because Cignetti does have on his resume, of course, connection to working for Alabama and Nick Saban. And while Alabama has steadied the ship a little bit here, while a lot of people talk about Cignetti with Penn State, and I don't think Cignetti has any interest in leaving Indiana, but you do wonder if Alabama ever came open, he would be at the top of anybody's list. As for Penn State, there is now speculation that another name, I think Matt Rule is the clubhouse leader for that job. I mentioned it only because Cignetti has been mentioned because he's a Pennsylvania native. I don't think that that's a possibility, but Marcus Freeman of Notre Dame is now one that there are reports out of Pennsylvania that perhaps Penn State could place a call to South Bend. And Marcus Freeman, again, why would you leave Notre Dame in the situation he has for Penn State? I guess it all comes down to dollars, right? But interesting thing to keep an eye on. Stephen Holder, when it comes to the Colts, there is one area that is a big question mark for me, and I'm going to ask Stephen about it next. 1 o'clock hour underway on a really good-looking Tuesday outside. My name is Jake Query. Corbin Lingenfelter is the guy pushing the buttons and putting it all together for us today. Eddie Garrison on vacation. Joining me now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. By the way, javahouse.com. You can get 25% off your first order. I'm talking about Peel and Pour, and they are fabulous, whether we are talking about the variety of coffees they have, Colombian coffee being my personal favorite in that regard. But don't forget, especially if you've got kids that are involved in sports, the Liquid Science, which is essentially their hydration, whether you want the Arctic Freeze or the orange flavoring, it is, you want to talk economic. You get that, you add it to water, and there you go for the kids after practice, or for anybody for that matter. They have, of course, the always popular Wrangler energy drink as well. 25% off at Jake25 is the code to use when you check out. That's Jake, that's my name. And then the number 2 and the number 5, Jake25. Joining me now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line from ESPN.com, Stephen Holder joining me. Stephen, I'm going to begin with this. I mentioned this off the top of the show. Going into the season, I don't know that I anticipated that the Colts would be right now the top of the heap in terms of protecting the quarterback. Sacks allowed, the Colts are giving up the fewest in the National Football League. Is that because of the solidarity of this line, or because of just the way Daniel Jones is getting rid of the football and the way Shane Steichen is designing plays?
Terrible answer, but it's all of the above. Well, before I go on, you know you've made it when you've got your own discount code. Okay?
Don't you love that?
That's big time. Okay, so I know people. I can say that. I can say I know people. So here's why it's all of the above, because any one thing is not enough to achieve that. In other words, like just delivering the football quickly is not enough, because those throws won't always be available to you, or just an offensive line being really good. That's not singularly enough. It has to be all of it, and here's why. Here's how that's happening, I should say. They have a situation where, and all those things are sort of intersecting, if you will, right? Why is Daniel Jones able to get the ball out quickly? To some degree, it's because Shane Steichen is very skilled at putting together really good route combinations and getting guys open. It's also a product of Daniel Jones understanding the coverage before the snap, which is the most important part, right? It's what got him the job, his ability to understand what's happening before the snap, and then what he does behind closed doors Monday through Friday too, right? So that is playing out as well. And then you have an offensive line that I think has exceeded expectations. I didn't think they would be bad. I never said that, but I thought this might be a process. Like it might take some time for these particular 5 guys to really gel. They've gelled, I think, from day one, frankly, and this has been a really good group. So it's all coming together. Pass protection is a function of all of that, and they're getting great performances in all of those areas.
Stephen, when you look at, Daniel Jones in general and what he's done this year, it really is a great story. I mean, it might be the best story in the National Football League right now, just the stability here, and whether, and I think people are starting to figure out, gosh, maybe he wasn't the total problem in New York. But having said all of that, and I realize this is probably something I'm going to ask you weekly, and it will maybe get tiresome in that regard, but when do you believe that the Colts really will sit down and determine whether or not this is the answer to all of their problems going forward? Or is it, in fact, a Sam Darnold possibility of a 1-year turnaround and then you hand it back over to someone else?
Well, the first thing I'd say regarding the Sam Darnold part of your question is that is not a comparable situation, right? Because they did have a first-round pick who they drafted, who was waiting in the wings. And, we still don't know a lot about
J.J.
meaning
McCarthy. Minnesota.
Minnesota, correct, sorry. We still don't know a lot about J.J. McCarthy, who they had drafted, in fact, around the same time, the same spring where they signed Sam Darnold. But I would say this, they at least knew the player and had held him in high regard. So they didn't have the same sort of calculation that the Colts will have to make. I think, as we say here today, I see no reason Daniel Jones won't be back here. But I also would say you don't have to make that decision right now, nor will they. I will say that it has already been broached internally, like, all right, this is probably going to work. Like, we can probably make this work beyond this year. That has been broached, but no one's going to do anything about it, like, actively right now. I don't think Daniel Jones is even going there right now, right? I mean, here's why. We're 6 games in. Their defensive matchups, the Colts offense versus the opponent defense, those matchups are going to intensify. They're going to get a lot tougher. I don't know that they're necessarily playing a really difficult schedule the rest of the way. I believe I saw the ESPN projections. I believe their remaining strength of schedule is like right in the middle. I think it's like 15th. So they have an average remaining schedule, not too hard, not too easy. But specifically, the defenses they are going to face do get better over the course of the remaining, 11 games. So that will, in turn, tell us a lot about Daniel Jones, right? I mean, he's going to be tested, I think, in some of those games. I don't think this is going to be a situation where he goes in the tank. I don't anticipate that happening. I think he's playing too well for this to completely go the other way. Will there be some challenges? Probably. But I don't know that it's going to be a wholesale situation where it changes how we see this guy. I think this is real. And it's not only him. Shane Steichen is a huge part of this, for sure, right? But a lot of this is Daniel Jones really just being who he always was. He's just in a better situation. And, maybe the joke's on us. Who knew?
And again, probably something perhaps for later, but I have a feeling on this, Stephen. I want your thoughts on it. And I feel bad for him. I do feel bad for him because I mentioned yesterday he seems to be a magnet for the bizarre. But at no fault of his, I realize. But just knowing, all that's gone into it. Did this injury seal the end of the era for Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis?
Well, I would say at minimum, it brings us closer to that likelihood, I think. That's what I'd say. I mean, I don't think this singularly pushes it over the edge. I think it was likely before this, it's likely now that he doesn't play here next year. I think that's where this ends up. But I just think it probably is another nail in the coffin, though. I think that's fair. And here's why. Because I don't know how this is going to go for sure, but it does seem like they're going to bring in another quarterback. I don't know who that will be. If they bring in another quarterback, then that person now gets all of the reps as the number two QB. That person gets ingrained. Meanwhile, Anthony Richardson is not participating. He's not developing. He's not getting that experience that they say he badly needs. So it doesn't help. It absolutely does not help.
Stephen, and again, then you wonder, but does he have value elsewhere, Anthony Richardson? I mean, is there a team that's going to take a flyer on him?
I think he'll be somewhere for sure. Whether now, what it looks like, what his role looks like, that's harder to project. But there are less talented quarterbacks than Anthony Richardson who get second chances, who weren't, the number 4 overall pick. I mean, I do think he has a lot to live down. Okay. He has some like not semantics, I guess, the how people perceive him, perceptions, I guess, right? He has some perceptions that he has to live down, whether it's, the tap out or whether it's, does he or does he not work hard enough? You know what I mean? Like, I think those questions are out there and he has to confront them. Some of them are fair, some of them are not. Let's just be honest, right? But they're out there and he's going to have to confront them. But it could be something where it doesn't cost you a lot of money. Let's say, for example, he gets traded after this season. No idea if that's going to happen, but you could cut him, you could trade him. Let's say he gets traded, which is where I predict this would go. That just, way too early prediction, right? You're going to get him probably for not much money. I don't know what the trade compensation would be, but probably not a ton. And what is the harm, right? What is the harm? You saw that with Daniel Jones to some degree last year in the middle of the season when the Vikings brought him in. And when that season ended this past spring, the Vikings did make a concerted effort to keep him. They just weren't prepared to pay $14 million when they had a viable quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. But they were serious about retaining him. So I say all that to say there will be some kind of market for Anthony Richardson. Whether it ends up being whether the result ends up being what he really wants, that's harder to say. But I think he'll be somewhere, and someone will give him a long look, and we'll see what happens from there.
Stephen Holder's our guest from ESPN.com. He is on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Stephen, the pass rush, an area that, interestingly enough, the Chargers are fairly susceptible at getting to Justin Herbert. That's one area where they have not been as strong as Indianapolis in protecting their quarterback. But and the Colts have had their moments, right? But they've invested so much in pass rush. Is it where you think they thought it would be at this point? And if not, what can they do to jumpstart it?
I don't think it's where they hoped it would be. It's okay. That's all I can say about it.
Right.
It's just okay. And frankly, I think the fact that from week to week my answer kind of changes, it tells you all you need to know. And what I mean by that is, like, I think a couple of weeks ago I was like, well, you know what? Latu's really taken another step here. And if that's the case, they're going to be pretty good. But then the next week it kind of feels like Jacoby has all day in the pocket, and you're like, are they even out there? And Kwity Paye did have a good game, and that was kind of the first time I really felt like Kwity impacted them in a consistent way throughout a game. But that's the problem, right? It's like one game, somebody has some impact, the rest of the guys are quiet. I'm not seeing that across the board effort all come together where everybody's hitting on the same day. And with what they have, they should get more of that, because they have a lot of veterans, as you said. They have a lot of capital invested there, both financial and draft capital. This unit needs to be more impactful. They are, I believe, in the top 5 in the NFL in defensive line spending. You've got to get more bang for your bucks, period. That is just unequivocal. And they are going to see tougher quarterbacks as they go on. So this is going to be, I think, front and center for the Colts.
Where do things stand in terms of their defensive backfield? Because, Servarius Mooney-Ward, really good player, freak concussion that knocks him out. You've got to consider the fact that you don't know what the availability is there. And they are still looking at practice squad plays elsewhere. That is an area I feel bad, Stephen, for Chris Ballard in this regard, and the fact that I think he really did make a concerted effort to strengthen that defensive backfield, and at no fault of his or anybody else's due to freak circumstance, they're just not flat out healthy. Where do things stand now in terms of who may be in and what they may need to do to shore that up?
Where do they stand? Well, are you available?
Yeah, no,
because,
seriously.
I mean, it's bad.
I come with a discount code.
That's right. This is perfect, right?
That's right.
Who has cap money in October? You got to look for bargains, right? So, yeah, it's bad. Look, the thing about Ward that you got to remember is this is his second concussion in a very short span. He sat out week 2, I believe, right? So, this is tough, man. And I don't know that we can sit here and pretend he's going to play on Sunday. I have no idea, but I think to assume that he has a likely shot of playing is probably fool's gold right now, right? So Kenny Moore then, meanwhile, not really seeing any recent progress there. I guess tomorrow's the next milepost on him. will he return to practice? But even if he does practice a little this week, I mean, he's been out 3 weeks. Is he just going to roll out of bed and play? I don't know. Does he have to ramp up? Jalen Jones, right? They would kill for him right now, but I don't know that he's any. He's closer, but I don't know that he's on the verge of returning. So they're nowhere, and they're going to have to buckle down and get what they can out of these young guys. So it's it's some of these undrafted guys in many cases who people are just learning their names. Hell, I'm just learning some of their names. And I think it is what it is. It's going to be tough, and it's going to put perhaps more strain or more pressure on the offense to get the job done, because on the back end of the defense, the likelihood of them giving up some points is pretty high right now. And I don't think there are any great and easy answers. They're plucking guys off of waivers right now, and that tells you everything about what you need to know about where they are.
Stephen, when you're sitting at home, right? You're sitting there and you're reading about Tennessee making a coaching change, and you're wondering what that means for Cam Ward, who came out of the same school as you, so you've been paying a little attention to the way he's going to jumpstart his NFL career, and you're like, man, this is like Trevor Lawrence all over again. You got a rookie quarterback with a lot of promise, and there's upheaval in the coaching situation. So you're reading about all of that, and your editor at ESPN calls you. And he says, Stephen, Bill here, your editor. You say, hey, Bill. He says, listen, we got all this stuff going on, and the Colts they're 5-1. They're the number one seed in the AFC, and we want to really do something original. We want to do something really unique, and we want you to write a column about what it is about the Colts that no one's talking about. What do you tell Bill is your idea?
Well, I think I don't know if this makes a great story, but it's definitely important. There's a confidence right now. And I think Michael Pittman said it yesterday. And maybe I should have picked up on this earlier, but maybe it just comes from winning. But he said, this feels like 2020 when Phillip Rivers came here. And I think Rivers kind of infused that locker room with confidence, because there's a swagger when you're Phillip Rivers, right? And you've been doing it for 15 or 16 seasons, okay, and have the resume that he had. So he brought that with him and sort of infused that locker room with a lot of confidence and raised everybody's level. And right now they have a little bit of that. Pittman said, we just expect to win every game. And it sounds like a cliche line. It's not the first time I've heard a player say something like that, but I think this was different. And I think you see it when you're in the locker room. You feel it. Like they are now expecting to win. Like they're not surprised anymore. We were certainly surprised that they're 5-1, but expectations change when you have success externally, but they also change internally. And this is a team that right now has like an expectation of itself that we win. That's what we do. And where does that come from? I think a couple places. Number one, Shane Steichen, it's weird. Like he's not maybe the most, I don't know if he's like the most rah-rah coach per se, but he's intense. And I think his intensity and his expectations of his players, I think that raises the bar. And then there's Daniel Jones, man. That's just a part of it. Like when the quarterback is getting it done, even though Daniel Jones is quiet and he doesn't say much, and I don't know what kind of presence he has per se in the locker room, but when he's getting it done, players respond to that. If they respond to nothing else, they respond to a guy who's playing really well. And there's a confidence here that is hard to capture maybe in words, but when you're around it, you see it and you feel it.
Daniel Jones is interesting to me, Stephen, because Stephen Holder, ESPN.com, my guest, we still don't know a lot about him. He's a quiet guy, and I'm talking about the fan base, even the media. He's new here, obviously, but he doesn't come in with that Phillip Rivers bravado, right? So if a quarterback was an automobile, like Lamar Jackson's a Ferrari. I mean, he's sleek, he's fast, he looks the part. Josh Allen would be, I don't know what Josh Allen would be, probably like a like a Camaro, right? A little bit more muscle to it, but yet still fast when it needs to be. What kind of car, from a personality standpoint, from when you've been around him, what kind of car is Daniel Jones? And I'm saying this to illustrate to listeners just what kind of dude he is.
This is actually a great question. I actually think he's like a Lexus SUV. Like the small ones, the crossovers, they can run for like 30 years. Okay, just change the oil, but they're also nice, right? They're not. It's not a supercar. It's not sexy necessarily, but nice, reliable. You never have to worry about it. It is. It blends in, right? Like it's not. What did you say, Josh Allen is? A Camaro?
Yeah, kind of.
It's maybe not a supercharged Camaro or Corvette, but also if you drove it to, if you parked it at the valet at St. Elmo's, nobody'd be looking at you like, really?
Right.
So you fit in, right? It's perfect. It's versatile. You can drive it to the grocery store. You can drive it out to a night on the town.
When Daniel Jones walks into the locker room, is he the guy that players stop? Like Peyton Manning, when he'd walk in the locker room, like everybody stopped, like, okay, what's the mood? And Andrew Luck, when he'd walk in the locker room, like kind of had a goofiness about him, but guys, you could tell just they knew he was in charge. Is Jones that kind of guy?
Yes, in a way that I think maybe you have to see. Like, for example, like you mentioned Luck, and the whole aw shucks thing that I think people on the outside perceived. Well, it was true to a degree. Was he a nerd? Yes, that's true. He would tell you that. But at the same time, I have seen him chew guys out. Andrew Luck. I have seen him chew guys out and drop an F-bomb and tell them where they need to be. With my own two eyes, I've seen that, right? I haven't seen that from Daniel Jones, but there is feedback from players who say like he is demanding and the expectations are clear. I think he understands like what the expectation is of a quarterback in terms of how they should carry themselves and how they should be demanding of their teammates. Remember, he has a relationship with the Mannings, right? So they understand that, and they imparted that on him. So I think some of that comes from that, and some of it just comes from him just being, Daniel Jones really just being someone who has high standards for himself. So in that regard, I think, yes, the answer is yes to that he is definitely, he's not maybe in your face and maybe doesn't, like, heads don't turn when he walks in the room and all that. He's not that guy. But when it's time to work, like, you don't half-ass it with Daniel Jones.
Stephen, what's new with what you're working on at ESPN.com in terms of your coverage of the Colts?
So I'm writing about some guy named Jonathan Taylor. So he's leading the league in rushing, right? But I think the question for me is, what's interesting for me is, there were a couple of seasons, 22 and 23, where you wondered, like, all right, is he ever going to be that guy again? He was good, but he kept getting hurt, and, he had to hold out and all that. And there was a moment there where I think he was a little bit forgotten, maybe nationally, right? We still appreciated him locally, but I think nationally people had moved on. Saquon Barkley's out there running for 2,000 yards. Derrick Henry, the second act in Baltimore, right? And what Jonathan Taylor has shown us last year and already this year is that I'm not done yet. Like, I'm still that guy. And I think that's pretty remarkable to see, because it doesn't always happen with running backs. A lot of times they flash in the pan for 2 or 3 years, and then they're never the same guy. This guy shows that he is, and I think that's pretty worthwhile.
Stephen Holder, ESPN.com. Appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
All right, you got it.
Stephen Holder, who himself, by the way, solid Corvette. Stephen, by the way, drives a super nice car, by the way, like this kind of uppity, really, his car, uppity. Foreign, one of those, like, oil change, $800, that kind of thing. I do know that from Stephen. which is representative of Steven, because when you look at him, he's not uppity by any stretch of the imagination, but a suave-looking guy, right? Corbin, what kind of car would I be?
Good old 90s Bronco.
Wait, the OJ car? Thanks. I'm the OJ car. Thanks,
You're
Corbin.
welcome.
Appreciate that. Last night, Pacer game, I was there. There were a couple of things that jumped out at me. One that I saw that I went, wow, and one that I was hoping to be wowed by, and it didn't happen. We'll explain next. So last night, I'm at the Pacer game. And they're playing San Antonio, and it's preseason. I get it. So, there's and I'm going to repeat what I said earlier. A couple of years ago, the Pacers, in what was fairly unprecedented, hold a media, just kind of a finger food gathering, like a social hour. Kevin Pritchard was there. I think Chad Buchanan was there. I don't believe Rick Carlisle was, but it was a really smart thing for all of us that cover the team, that are fortunate enough to cover the team, to be down there to just kind of shoot the bull, meet and greet. And that was when they had just acquired Tyrese Halliburton. They traded away Sabonis, and they basically were saying to those that covered the Pacers, and certainly from a media standpoint, our job is essentially just as a liaison between the brass or the coaches, the players, and the fan base. And admittedly, that's a constantly evolving medium. But they were saying, listen, we're asking you guys and gals, while you're not, obligated to do so, we are asking that you simply let people know that we're going to require some patience, because we're starting this thing over again, and we're going to take our lumps. And to their credit, they hit on about everything. They traded Malcolm Brogdon for Aaron Nesmith. They traded, obviously I mentioned Sabonis for Halliburton. They drafted Mathurin. I mean, they signed Toppin. Look, I don't need to go over every single transaction. They were a half away from winning the NBA title, so you all know how it worked out. So in the preseason, I'm having to remind myself that they've earned the benefit of our doubt. They've earned it, right? And so the preseason right now, some of the lumps that they're going to go through, or some of the things that we're going to wait on, we probably have to be patient on again, because it is, and I know that they don't want to say a gap year, but it is to an extent, because you have no Tyrese Halliburton, Miles Turner's in Milwaukee, and you don't know where that replacement's going to come. Whether it be the, Jay Huff, James Wiseman. I love Isaiah Jackson, but all of those guys are kind of similar to one another in the fact that none of them really stretch out. But I'll get to that in a second. So as I'm thinking about all of that, and I'm watching this game, and I'm trying to figure out exactly who the Pacers are going to be this year, and I'm having to remind myself that I'm not going to know that in one game. But they announce at the beginning of the game, they're like, fans, put your hands together for Rick Smits. And Rick Smits is sitting down there, and he waves to the crowd. And I'm looking over at Rick Smits, and I'm going, okay, Rick Smits is 7'4", and was a really good player in his era, because he was one of the first big men that we had seen that could step out and hit a 15-foot shot and had a really nice touch. And Rick Smits was coming right off of the era of like Mark Eaton, where 7'4" players were just these huge shot-blocking behemoths, and that was it. And Rick Smits had about him a mobility that we had not really seen from a guy that size. And it made life miserable for Patrick Ewing and whatever else. But he's still at that point when he would hit a 15-footer like he did to beat Orlando. It was like, oh my gosh, this guy's 7'4" and he's hitting that. And I'm thinking about all of that as I look down back onto the floor to watch Victor Wembanyama get a rebound, go between his legs, bring it up the floor like a point guard, and then pull up and effortlessly drain a 28-foot shot. And all I could think to myself is, this is the evolution of the NBA today. The NBA today is truly positionless basketball. And yet the Pacers, made it to one half away from the NBA crown by playing to some extent with guys in designated positions, but having a big that in Miles Turner would stretch out the defense that they were playing against because of the fact that Turner would get a rebound, and then instead of Turner being the one that would go between the legs and bring it up the floor like a point guard and effortlessly hit a three, Turner would facilitate transition, and then he would trail. And if they were not able to get a fast transition basket, they kick it back out, and as Turner is trailing, he's able to hit a three, and defenses have to be aware of that. And it is going to be an adjustment in the fact that neither Jay Huff nor Isaiah Jackson nor James Wiseman has shown that sort of an exterior capability. And that's going to be an adjustment. Now, I do believe, and I think that they will go over the course of the year to assess that. The center position to the Pacers is the quarterback position to the Colts. The quarterback position for the Colts, they had to go out and they get Daniel Jones, and I think they found their long-term answer. I think the Pacers are looking to see if one of those three guys is in fact Daniel Jones, but in reality, they probably this time a year from now are going to be introducing us to perhaps a free agent or a player that they've traded for that is going to be their next Miles Turner long-term centerpiece. And one of the important aspects of that is a center that, as I've talked about, in the high post can facilitate through his passing game like Turner would do with everybody running that kind of weave rotation at the top of the key and facilitating and getting for three-point shooters. And I don't know that that guy's on the roster right now. Jay Huff, again, it's one preseason game. It's one preseason game. But in terms of his passing ability and facilitating ability, I did admittedly expect to see a little more than what I saw last night, but it's one preseason game. Now, Benedict Mathurin was outstanding. Benedict Mathurin was, he was pulling from everywhere. I think he was 12 of 14. He was perfect in the second quarter. He finishes with 31, okay? And, just for example here on the text line, Jake, as the local Wizards super fan here in Indy, why do you hate us so much? We're always the example of poverty to you. Now, I get it. Listen, I always just mention the Wizards because it's like, it's not poverty. The Wizards, though, are the perfect example of a team that seemingly, and actually there was a nice little rivalry going on between the Pacers and Wiz a handful of years ago with that team when the Wizards were healthy and Beal was there and Wall and Gortat. They had a nice team. But it just feels like with Benedict Mathurin, if he is going to be a point person, pardon the pun, for them this year, and a guy that is going to be, as Rick Carlisle said, when he is finding his shot within their offense, he's very effective. But if he's going to have, let's say that Mathurin averages 18.5, 19 points per game, 20 points per game this year, that is going to price him into an area where a franchise that is looking for scoring is going to overpay for him. The Pelicans, the Wizards, the Hornets, those kinds of a team, all of a sudden come along, rebuilding Phoenix, and he becomes like a Bradley Beal type player where somebody overpays for him or prices him out of the market, and that's going to be the fine line for the Pacers, right? Not in no way, shape, or form as an indictment on the relationship with Benedict Mathurin, but when you look at the money that they've got tied up in Halliburton, in obviously what they're going to have to extend Nesmith, Nembhard, those guys, and so then you can't afford to max deal or close to it Mathurin, and if he has a big-time year, it is possible somebody's going to offer him, maybe not a max deal, but big-time money, and it might price Indiana out of that. And that's one of the storylines, I think, this year that's going to be very, very interesting to watch. Speaking of storylines interesting to watch, another one happening on West 56th Street with the Colts. Back into that next. Look at you, Corbin, spitting it out, baby. You know, there's a, I've mentioned this several times before, but years ago, about every 2 years or so, and I'm going to get back into the Colts here in a second, but every 2 years or so, this story resurfaces, and I always have to be like, no. It's not at all what I said. But Paradise City by Guns N' Roses. Axl Rose, Izzy Stradlin from Lafayette, right? Lafayette Jeff High School. And when I was in college, Appetite for Destruction came out when I was a sophomore in high school. When I was in college, it was still, Guns N' Roses were at their apex. And when I was at Indiana, there became this like urban legend amongst IU students that Paradise City was written by Axl Rose and Izzy Stradlin about Bloomington and about going down and partying in Bloomington when they were growing up in Lafayette. Because, of course, when you're at IU, it was like, man, there's no good-looking girls at Purdue. They had to come to Bloomington to party. That was like this urban legend. Obviously not true. The song is actually, I'm sure, about actually, I take that back. I know the origin of the song. I don't think it's actually written about any specific city, but the lyrics were different originally. It was, instead of where the girls are pretty, it was the girls have big, and then you can fill in the rhyme. And they changed the lyrics. But nonetheless, when I worked at WIBC, and I don't know if people remember this, but I worked at WIBC for like 3 weeks in 2007. And when I was doing the morning show with Terry Stacy, somehow or another that song came up, and I told that exact story. And under the exact pretense of that, of like, look, we know this is not true, but this was the urban legend back in the late 80s and early 90s from people at IU. Somehow or another, there is a website that has it's like songfacts.com or something like that. And on said website, somebody, and I have no idea who, somebody at that time posted on there about Paradise City and said, according to Jake Query, a disc jockey at WIBC Radio in Indianapolis, which we didn't play music. I'm not a disc jockey. And then it says, Query, a close personal friend of Axl Rose's, claims that this was about when they were growing up in Lafayette together. And so about every 2 years when Indiana and Purdue play one another in any sport, somebody somehow invariably finds that thing and then posts it like on, Barstool Indiana or whatever, and it goes viral, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, Jake, like you knew Axl Rose growing up, and I have to sit there and give the disclaimer all the time of no, this was like the old phone drill game of misinterpreted 100 times over. So if you are just now for the first time hearing that, let me clarify that no, I did not grow up with Axl Rose. No, I've never met Axl Rose. No, I've never claimed that was what the song emphatically was about. It was simply an urban legend from back in the day. And likewise, just so you know, Skiles Test did not really have a house of blue lights with his wife buried underneath the glass bottom of a pool. We can go on and on and on. We talked to Stephen Holder about this earlier, and I know that this is a subject that is enigmatic, and we don't know definitives about it. But I feel bad for Anthony Richardson. I really do. Because I don't know Anthony Richardson. And I say that because, yes, when we are credentialed to cover teams, when we're allowed to go and talk, Kevin Bowen talks to Colts players in the locker room. He talks to them after practices. He watches them. He talks to them after games. James Boyd, Stephen Holder, etc. We all do. It doesn't mean that we know what their lives are behind closed doors. It's like the old Roy Kent line in Ted Lasso. As for why Isaac did what he did, that's none of my business. As for why or how people are in terms of their personal lives and what's going on in their life, we have no idea. We can get indicators or glimpses into their lives of who they are. And in Anthony Richardson's case, I think we've gotten a little of that. I mentioned that I've seen the documentary or watched the documentary about him when he was in high school, and there were a lot of things about him, or are a lot of things about him, that were very admirable. He was essentially a latchkey kid that was a father-like figure for his younger brother. He went to a high school that did not have the, elaborate, financially invested resources from both a facilities standpoint for football and a coaching staff for football. I mean, he had, and I admire this, where he grew up in Florida. The documentary that I watched, I mentioned, there was a show that was being done. I think what happened was there was a film crew that decided that they were going to do, a reality series following 3 prime 5-star high school football recruits for their senior year. And then they were going to put it together, and my guess is they were going to sell it to Netflix or whatever else. And I don't think it ever got picked up by a major outlet. And then later, it was dispatched to a smaller website or whatever. And that's where I watched it. And it was Bryce Young was one of the players. Anthony Richardson was one. And the third one, I forget the kid's name. He was from Texas, a big high school in Texas where football's king. And he ended up going to Iowa and then I think maybe Texas A&M or a couple of other places. But Richardson's coaches that he had were, you could tell, really good guys. I mean, really good, well-intended guys. But they were there to coach life more than coach football. And while other players had, Bryce Young was at a big-time program, high school program in California, and had a position coach that was working with him on his footwork and his throwing motion and his release point and all of those things. And Anthony Richardson, it was like, these guys were more just mentoring them as young people. And there's a place for, that's great. I commend those guys. But they weren't specified football coaches. So Richardson was as raw can be all the way up to the point where he was drafted. And so I really have rooted for him and hoped, and I have always hoped that he does well. I don't know him personally, but you get those glimpses. What happened on Sunday before the game against Arizona in a freak accident? I don't know what's going to come of that. But it feels like that's kind of the beginning of the end of his time in Indianapolis. And at the risk of sounding crass, it almost seems, fitting is the wrong word, but like a proper illustration of his time here in the fact that like he's using this band to do his stretch before the game, and then it breaks and snaps and comes back and, tragically, sadly, hits him in the eye, injures him. I mean, you feel for the guy. In no way is that his fault. But simply the point that just when things were starting to like stretch out, and then all of a sudden with one simple snap, everything comes back flying and hits him like right there, and then it's over. And it almost feels like that is the summary of his time in Indianapolis, because it seemingly was happening faster and more like stretched out than even he anticipated. And then, just like with the helmet tap and other such things happened faster and with more immediacy and with more oomph and emphasis and finality than he anticipated. And now that you look at the fact that, and Daniel Jones is a player that has had a history of injury and not being able to play totality of a season. And for that reason, one would assume that within the next month, there are going to be opportunities where Richardson could have gotten in there and still shown what he can do. And now that's going to be denied because one would assume he's going to be out, 4 to 6 weeks minimum? I mean, one would assume at the best scenario. And so if those situations present themselves, unfortunately, it is likely going to be for someone else's opportunity. And that's unfortunate. But it feels like that's inevitable. Ralph Reif will join us tomorrow. We'll get more into kind of the timeline of that injury and other such things. Mentioned earlier the Pacers last night. Scott Agnes, Fieldhouse Files, joins us. Recaps next. To report before we get to Scott Agnes of Fieldhouse Files. Number one, Chicago's Pizza is no longer unbeaten in the Query & Company Fantasy Football League. Now, Chicago's Pizza is unbeaten when it comes to pizza quality, no question about that. But in terms of Nate's fantasy team, Nate from Chicago's Pizza suffered his first defeat this week. I think Eddie's team lost as well, Eddie Garrison's. As I'm looking at the league standings here, in fact, Eddie Garrison now at 4-2. Chicago's Pizza is at 5-1. Congratulations to Brian, who knocked off and upset Chicago's Pizza. My team 2-4, by the way. There's like 5 of us that are all tied for last at 2-4. But it's not my fault. I had T. Higgins, and nobody can throw to him, and Justin Jefferson's been disappointing, and, what are you supposed to do, right? So that is upset number 1. Upset number 2, this is the biggest stunner of all. Do you happen to have the breaking news sounder by chance, Corbin? If you could, please. Now, I want you to hear Corbin, who is wearing a big trucker hat right now. Just count to 3 if you could into the microphone, Corbin.
1, 2, 3.
Okay. Corbin is, like Corbin, if we're talking about cars, he's an F-150, right? And so I just asked Corbin what his favorite style of music was. I said, what kind of music do you like? Corbin breaks out with the following and tells me my 2 favorite artists are Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. And is that correct?
That is right.
That's the bit, and that's, listen, I'm not damning you for that at all, and that is a sign of an extremely, extremely, fine taste, right? Exquisite taste and an intellect, quite frankly, and I'm not saying that you don't represent all of those things, but for a fella your age, because I'm going to guess, Corbin, that you are 27 years old.
Little high.
25.
Little low.
26.
Yes.
See how I work on the prices right? For 26 years old, that is very impressive, by the way. Scott Agnes, I don't know if Scott Agnes more a Taylor Swift guy than a Frank Sinatra guy, joins us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Again, Jake25 is the discount code if you want to get the bundle, whether it be the Wrangler Energy, the Liquid Science Hydration, the coffee formulas, all of it at Java House, javahouse.com. Use that code, and it's a value, I'm telling you right now. You're talking 48 drinks you're going to get for like $1 a piece, basically, at the rate you're going with the discount code Jake25. Scott joins us now. Scott, last night, Pacers, I thought Benedict Mather, and I talked about it, he was really, really efficient. But I'm a little worried, and I know it's just one preseason game, so I need you, Scott Agnes, to talk me off of this ledge. I'm concerned about what is going to happen at the center position, and that there is too much similarity between James Wiseman, Isaiah Jackson, and Jay Huff, and nobody really is going to separate themselves in that area. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, I was going to add, you need some separation, and right now we have not gotten that. It's tough when you go against Bismack Biyombo like they did last night.
It was the presence of greatness. And and he got in the game late, Bismack Biyombo did. And, listen, he was out there floor generaling. You got to love Bismack Biyombo, his 7th team now with the San Antonio Spurs. And I don't know if people know this or not, Scott, but my favorite thing about him is the fact that his name is Bismack Biyombo, right?
Absolutely. We'll keep pounding that one. No, I love it. That's why I had to bring that up,
of course.
Obviously. But, no, you're totally right. The center position was the number one concern entering training camp, and I think now with the new issues at point guard, given the injury challenges, to me that becomes number one, because if you can't bring up the ball, you can't really get into anything on both ends of the floor. But the center position, I would say right now, is a big yellow flag. It's too early to be concerned, but at the same time, in a game last night where you mostly played starters for a big portion of it, right? Throw out the second game. There wasn't much to that. They sat many guys. But to not have a center make a field goal, to have some guards out-rebound your centers, and just in other ways, how they were beaten back in transition, the rim presence. That's a great big flag right now that they have to get solved here very quickly.
And, Scott, 2 things here, disclaimers that I'm going to give that I've been giving all day here. It's been like a disclaimer Tuesday on the program. But one of them is, I get it. It is entirely possible that once you get Tyrese Halliburton back and a year from now and you're ready to kind of make another push, it's entirely possible that the center on that roster is not on the current roster. That is a possibility. But and then number two, the Pacers have earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to asking for our patience, because in terms of building last year's roster, for example, I mean, they hit on every aspect, right? Having said that, and it's very early, but Jay Huff, to me, I expected him to be a little bit of a better facilitator and play and have a little bit more strength to him than I have seen so far. Am I being too critical there?
No, but I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is the conditioning aspect. This is a whole new level of play. When you're having some players pressure full court, you're trying to play quicker than anybody in the league. I thought there was a couple times last game where he was huffing and puffing, no pun intended, trying to keep up and run down the floor. And a lot of the same is probably true with Jackson and Wiseman, too, coming off their injury. And so, yeah, you want to give them some grace, but at the same time, what are we doing here? Like, you need a starting caliber center by game one, and if not, you're going to have to make some tweaks along the way. And I thought the best lineup last night featured Obi Toppin at that center position, which does speak to their versatility. But Jay Huff, what they're betting on there is the analytics game with him, that if he gets more minutes, he can be more productive in what he's able to do out on the floor. But the other big thing with him, I think, that has obviously stood out is foul trouble. That's prevented him from finding any rhythm or maybe confidence out there with this new group.
Yeah, the pacing, to your point about conditioning with Jay Huff, just for example, the pacing to me, and for that matter, even Jackson and Wiseman, like, I think it's going to be Jackson that's going to be the starter. I would assume that that's the one they go with. But even Jackson, who I do like him a great deal, but it appears as though, and he also is having to get into form coming off of the injury, Isaiah Jackson. He and Wiseman both, Scott, I think we know that they can play at pace once they have their conditioning back underneath them. The question that I have for you, and maybe we don't know this answer yet, is do they have the same bounce, either of them, coming off of the injury they came off of, both of them with an Achilles?
I'd say it's too early to tell. I don't really even want to judge that till like you're a year removed from surgery. I'm actually quite fascinated that they're playing out there and seemingly not on a minutes restriction, Jake, or anything like that. Like, this is a little bit surprising in a good way that they are out there. Same thing with Tyrese. He's ahead of schedule. Now, don't expect him back, but that's a positive thing to come out of it. And one of the challenges I would say, too, to mention with Huff is I expect for him to be a little bit more of a presence from outside. We haven't really gotten to see the outside shooting that maybe we expected. How about Jay, off the bench, his only 3 shots are all 3-point attempts. Yeah, I like the balance. I like being a stretch 5, but you need some interior threats as well when you're expecting that from your center. So you want to see, to go back to your first point, you need some separation. You need these guys to do a better job defending without fouling so that they can stay on the floor and maybe build some confidence with these new lineups that they're unaccustomed to playing with.
The Scott Agnes, our guest, Fieldhouse Files, he is on the Java House Peel and Port guest line. Scott, the point guard position, you mentioned it. I mean, and for those unfamiliar, obviously Tyrese Halliburton out for the year. TJ McConnell, who is going to get significant minutes, is also out with injury. And I don't think you rush that back at all. I think you let him play his way back from that. But Cameron Payne last night got 17 minutes, hit a couple of threes. I think he's got an unorthodox-looking shot, I will say that. But do you anticipate that Cameron Payne stays on roster all year, or is this, probably just until they don't have that need again and then he falls victim to the numbers game?
Yeah, I would lean more towards the latter, Jake. I would think, let's assume, and hopefully this is the case, that here in the next month, this point guard position gets a lot more healthier, right? Like Ben Shepherd's trending upward. We're not going to see him really probably in this preseason, which is a disappointment. Same goes for Cam Jones, who they drafted early there in that second round as he's dealing with a back injury. You hope some of these clear up for next month, because then it goes into what we were just talking about. Maybe you need to bring in someone else to challenge at that center spot. Maybe you don't, and maybe that group can solidify itself a little bit more. But right now, I think it was one of many calls the Pacers placed around the league trying to look into what they liked from Payne, and they liked him being a veteran, and they liked that he could shoot the ball. And he did have a stretch, I think, of 8 straight points maybe in the third quarter of that last game after not making a field goal in about 19 minutes in his debut. That was 2 days into his tenure with the Pacers. So I do acknowledge that a little bit. But you need a lot more production out of your point guard spot. I think we know what Nembhard is exactly. I think there will be some hybrid roles in terms of Mathurin maybe bringing it up and Siakam bringing it up, obviously, and getting into the flow. But, I mean, this point guard position we've seen over the years, you need depth in that spot, one, because injuries are inevitable, but also because of, especially in this offense, how much is leaned upon the point guards to get into the offense, to facilitate, and to lead.
Scott, how – and I know that this is not anything new here. I'm not breaking any news, right? But it was the first time that I've really sat and watched, and I was surprised the number of minutes that he got. But conditioning, to your point, probably brought into play here. How literally transcendently good is Victor Wembanyama?
Yeah, it's amazing. He makes things look so seamless. He can run the floor, as you said, so easily. He's just a force, and I think the natural comparison, I think, is Giannis, and he's far ahead of what Giannis was in year 3.
Yeah, I mean, he's 21 years old, right?
Yeah, and you can tell he's had elite training, both physically and from his basketball standpoint and physically, because there's so much concern with big guys, their feet, their back, and it seems like he's doing everything in his power, and obviously is surrounded by the right people to prepare. Like, he has one of the great pregame warm-ups, the attention to detail and the little things he does to be there on game night. And, yeah, I thought Rick Carlisle said it well last night. Thank goodness we only see him twice a year because he is a force. And if you want to talk about faces of the league, I mean, he's probably headed that way here in another year or two. There's a big reason why national TV, even though the Spurs weren't any good last year, are lining up to show him on TV and feature him.
Scott, and again, I mean, what is he, 7? Is he listed at 7'4" or 7'5" now?
Well, that's the funny thing. I said all along he's 7'6". Last year he was listed as 7'3". They upped him to 7'5" this year, and I'm not sure they're there yet, in my opinion.
He hit, I think if I'm not mistaken, 2 separate, like, pull-up threes. I mean, effortlessly, right? I mean, like, he's bringing the ball up the floor and then stopping and pulling up. Listen, that kind of play is the only thing. If you want to know how good, this is all I've got to say. If you want to know, if you are somebody listening right now and you're like, yeah, I didn't get a chance to see the game, they're talking about Victor Wembanyama. I know that he was this phenom coming in. How good is he? All I've got to say to you is Bismack Biyombo only got 6 minutes last night. That's how good he is, right? You're keeping Bismack Biyombo off the floor. That's how good you are, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is an example of the evolution, obviously, of the game. I mean, go back 15 years. A guy with like Roy Hibbert. Back to the basket, throw it into the post, inside out, protect the rim. That's what was being asked of that position. And now, years later, whether it's Wemby, whether it's Jokic, whether, you name it, Miles Turner even, to go back to a former Pacer, guys that can bring the ball up, can get you into your offense, can be the fulcrum of your offense if you want to play through them, they're just multi-talented and have an incredible skill set that, yeah, the sky's the limit truly for a guy like Wemby who's just 21. Remarkable, isn't it?
But, honestly, like – and again, you saw the video of him when he was playing in France, like stepping over a bench to sign an autograph, so you knew how big he was. But, like, to actually see it last night was impressive. Corbin, do you feel a slight breeze by chance? I don't know if you feel it or not. Oh, yes, indeed. It appears as though our friend Robin the Genie, who has not been around for a while, has made his way into the studio. He might have a question for Scott. Is that right? That is correct, yes. Scott Agnes, I am Robin the Genie, as you know. I oftentimes allow people to make a prediction, and if it comes correct, I will give them $1 million. How about that, Scott? Think about the Taylor Swift.
I didn't know I was in for something like this today.
You can go to 3 different Taylor Swift shows with that kind of money. Robin, what's your question for? Yes, that is correct, Scott. My question for you is this. I need you to write down your answer on a sheet of paper. And at the end of the year, if it is correct, I will give you the sum of money. My question is yes or no. Will Tyrese Halliburton play a single game for the Indiana Pacers in this regular season?
Well, Jeannie, I would rule that out and put a hard no on my white piece of paper right now.
Wow. Robin, man, you sound convinced there, Scott. No chance at all, huh?
No plans either for that matter.
I get it. But,
here's
there are always people that are going to hold out hope, right?
Of course, and that's fine. But here's the other thing that in the big picture, you got to realize too, is this wasn't the end of the regular season, mid-April. This was the literal last moment of the season. You're talking the end of June, which cuts into rehab time significantly. That's why you hear Jason Tatum talk about, hey, my goal is to try to get back. And the other thing too is I think these players need something to motivate them. They need something, an end in sight for this pain. And so, I mean, with Aaron Rodgers a couple years ago, we were all following. He wanted to get back if they were
in the hunt. That. And I can't recall, did he get back on the field at the end of that season? He kept threatening.
I don't think so, nor was it needed.
Right.
Because I think the game would have been like December 26th or something, and I think the Jets were far out of contention at that point. But that's something these professional athletes need something to grab hold to, whether it's going to happen or not. Now, I do like the fact how the front office came out and said, guys, nope, not returning, not happening. We want him to be healthy for the long run. And I think that is the right mentality because let's say, hypothetically, Jake, for your genie here, that he's able to return in late March. All right, so when everybody else is atop their game, they've had all season, he is easing his way back during the most pressure-packed part, and you're applying all this pressure both physically, mentally, and on that Achilles to get back. To me, it doesn't add up whatsoever for anybody's stake in all this, especially with him being here for the long term, having the long-term contract, and you want his health to be paramount, especially this injury. This isn't an ankle sprain. This is a torn Achilles.
I know, man. It is so tempting just because, like, for the peace of mind that you want to see him out there. And I get it. I mean, it's hard to believe. And I feel for him because when you watch it and you look at him and you're like, man, it's only been whatever it's been. I mean, to your point, 4 months? And yet,
yep.
When he's walking around out there, you feel like the guy can go out and play, and you just know that's not reality, right?
And Jake, that's exactly what we saw with Caitlin Clark too in the regular season. People saw her shooting at shoot-around. Yeah, go figure. That's what you do there. But that's all you're doing. You're not having to anticipate what the defense is doing. You're not having to avoid fans courtside, stepping on things, diving for balls. Like, there's too many unpredictable things that can come into play in addition to feeling right, being able to make cuts. It's very different to go right into a shot that you've done 1,000 times that day versus all the different other things. And so I think that's actually a perfect example for a very different injury.
By the way, last night Tyrese Halliburton wearing the Shohei Ohtani jersey. Is he a Dodgers fan? Do we know?
He is not. That's him playing into his WWE and so there's a story he shared a couple years ago how he was invited, Jake, to throw out the first pitch at a Brewers game. And then the Pacers kept beating the Brewers. And obviously Milwaukee, his kind of hometown baseball team. He's not a big baseball guy, I don't think. But now he's going against them because he's like, wow, we rescinded the invite. And then to add a little flavor to all this, Jake, is Miles and the Bucks have been attending recent games as well. So there might be a little something there.
Now,
to play into it.
I did have somebody ask me last night. They said they were in Vegas, and while they were in Vegas, they're like, yeah, I turned around, and there was this storefront in Vegas, and it was like everything was Tyrese Halliburton. I'm like, well, that had to have been one of the Hallie Marts, right, for Puma. Is that beyond just Indianapolis where those are popping up?
Not to my knowledge, no. It's probably just a Puma outlet store or something like that. And he has the signature shoes, so of course they're going to want to promote the heck out of it. And it just came out less than a month ago, so it's a top of mind.
I was thrilled last night, by the way, to see that Aaron Nesmith is wearing the same like bright yellow fluorescent New Balance shoes. I'm going to buy a pair of those, and I have no idea what I'll ever wear them with, but maybe to run on the treadmill.
And then report back, because I've heard good things. I've just never worn them.
I mean, I think they're cool looking. As he said, they pop. I believe Aaron Nesmith said it. All right, Scott, what's new and exciting at Fieldhouse Files?
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm going to tackle here is just the golden age right now we're experiencing in Central Indiana with all the different sports teams and how even like Caitlin and Steph White were talking about how it feels like a university, how every team supports one another. So be on the lookout for that here soon.
All right, appreciate it, Scott. Scott Agnes joining us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line from Fieldhouse Files. And he mentioned it. I mentioned it off the top, the fact that you've got the number one team in college basketball right here, Central Indiana in Purdue. The arguably best team, certainly the best story in college football right here, right now with Indiana. The Colts are the number one seed as it stands right now. They have the best record in the AFC. The Pacers, a half away just 4 months ago from winning the NBA crown, and still a lot of those pieces back and waiting to see. And then, of course, obviously the Fever season coming to an end, but a really, really good one with Caitlin Clark coming back next year. We'll see what happens. The Indians with all new uniforms. I love them. I went over. I got a new hat for the Indians. Love their new design. And there's another team in town that actually has an upcoming event that they are supporting, historic event taking place at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. You remember a year ago, and I talked about this a lot, there was a team that I was intrigued by. I didn't know a lot about. I was naive to. And it was a team that I started going in the wintertime, went out to the Fishers Event Center, which is a fabulous facility, and watching it, and I'm like, holy cow. This was, first off, I was blown away by the popularity of the sport. I admit my ignorance to it. I surrender to the fact that I should have known more and been more aware of it. And I went once, was captivated by the speed, the athleticism, the hand-to-eye coordination, and said, I got to go back again. Went twice, went a third time, and then I realized what I was missing, and that is that it is a sport that I think is not just, you wouldn't even say rapidly growing, it is already well arrived, in particular for young people to enjoy. And it's going to be on display in Indianapolis, not only on the big screen, but also in a big arena. And the new head coach of the team and a big event taking place will join me next. Of course, it was their inaugural season in Indianapolis, and I went out to check it out and was absolutely blown away, not just by the support from, in particular, young people, but families and the number of volleyball players in Central Indiana. And that includes at the college level, which, by the way, coming up on Thursday at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, it is the Monon Spike match between 22nd ranked Indiana and 12th ranked Purdue in volleyball in downtown Indianapolis. The Indy Ignite, who now have a film about them and that inaugural season at the Heartland Film Festival. We will get into all of that. But I want to welcome to the program and to Central Indiana the new head coach of the Indy Ignite, Coach Lauren Bertolacci, who joins me on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. And, Coach, it has been a circuitous route to land you in Indianapolis, but let me be amongst many to say welcome to Central Indiana.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here, and I love it already.
Now, I can tell by the accent you're not from Kentucky, so you are Australian, but you most recently have coached in Switzerland. Now, I want to begin with this. So you have coached in Europe. You have had a massively successful coaching career there. How does one end up coming from Switzerland now to Indianapolis to coach with the Indy Ignite?
Oh, good recruiting from Indy, right? No, I'm kidding. Listen, it's volleyball's so big here, and it was just a matter of time that there were going to be professional leagues here that we know are going to end up being some of the best in the world. So I feel like I'm stepping in at the right time, and it's a great career choice for me, and I've landed in a spot that's very professional and really cares a lot about volleyball and the work they're doing.
Here's a really dumb question for you, okay? I'm almost embarrassed to ask it. It's so dumb, but I've made a living coach with dumb questions.
Got it.
Is volleyball, you grew up in Australia. You have coached, you've been around, as I'd mentioned, you coached in Switzerland. You've been part of a national team, and you are a native of Australia, and now you come here. Does the game change in different areas, or is volleyball pretty much the same and stylistically, regardless of where you're playing it?
That's actually a very smart question, I would say.
Well, thank you.
Stylistically, it changes. Stylistically, it changes a little bit country to country. Let's say, look at Japanese versus Brazilian volleyball, different style of coaching, different style of play. American really have their own style as well. So there are small stylistic differences, and end of the day, we still run by the same rules. So there are a lot of similarities as well. But I've seen a lot of volleyball, and I really try to blend a lot of different styles and find out kind of what works best.
Had you spent a lot of time in the U.S. before coming here for this job?
Nope, not at all. Indiana's my first stop in the U.S.
Is it really?
Yep.
What are your initial impressions?
I love it here. I live up in Fishers near our event center, and I think it's really beautiful. I'm here with my dog, and she loves all the trails and everything. Most importantly, sport community here. I walked in the door and pretty much saw how much everybody cares about volleyball and sport, and I can see that everyone's really ready to push women's volleyball through the roof, and that's pretty much what I'm all about. Yeah,
and you mentioned this when we started talking there in terms of, and I was surprised by it, Coach, and I apologize for that, in the fact that I was naive to an extent before the Ignite as to the enthusiasm for volleyball in this area. And in particular, and I think it's great, and I wanted you to touch on this, in the fact that Lauren Bertolacci is my guest, the head coach of the Indy Ignite. The example for young girls, because I think sometimes, the saying is, sometimes to be something, you have to see something. And for young girls in this area to see high-level volleyball and professional volleyball right there as the example, as they're just starting to play and growing the sport, which already has a popularity to it. But are you aware of that example that you're setting for young people and what it can mean to this community?
Oh, 100%. I agree with you. We can't be what we can't see. I think, like I said, it's been a long time coming that pro volleyball is come to America, and it's a bit of the tip of the iceberg. So we show what volleyball is. We show how volleyball can change. People have all eyes on us, and we are the top of the top. So we absolutely must understand our influence and understand how many young women are going to be watching us every day, and the way we play, the character that we play with, who we are. I think it's very important and something we certainly won't take lightly at Indy Ignite. And we really want to define what professional volleyball is going to look like in Indiana, and hopefully that can sort of drip down into the huge club scene we have here as well. And yeah, I'm very excited for the influence that we can have.
By the way, how cool is it to live in Switzerland? I've never been. Now let me ask you. Actually, Coach, let me ask you this. You've got to be. I'm going to allow you to be the judge and jury on a very important question here. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. I'm flying coming up in a month here. I'm going on a vacation where I have a 4-hour layover in the Geneva, Switzerland airport. That's just a layover, 4-hour layover. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I will get off the plane and I'll be at the airport. I likely will not have time to leave the airport. Can I check the box saying that I've been in Switzerland, or does that not count?
That absolutely does not count.
Okay, hold on. What if I leave the airport and I just go and get a piece of Swiss chocolate and then come back into the airport and go back through security? Does it then count?
Yeah, and that's actually obligatory. You got to get down to the Geneva Lake, grab a croissant and a piece of chocolate, and get back on your next plane.
How far is that from the airport? Will I have time? This is the stuff I really want to get to. Will I have time to do that?
Yeah, you'll be able to have a little quick stop in the city. Yeah.
Yes. All right, and then it will count, right?
It will count.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, honestly, though, how did you go from Australia to Switzerland? And that's a world away, obviously. How did that change you? How did that grow you, not only as a coach, but maybe as a person as well, to be that far from home?
Oh, gosh, yeah. I actually left Australia when I was 20. There is still no professional volleyball league in Australia, so I want to make my living from that. It was a necessity to head to Europe, so I did. And I think it's set me on my career path. It's opened all my opportunities. It's exposed me to many, many different cultures, and I don't even think I'd be close to the same person that I am right now. But it certainly it's been an amazing 20 years that I've spent in Europe, and I think every journey I've taken has been really important, and wouldn't trade anything. And
your dog is Swiss, is that right?
Yep, my dog is Swiss, yep.
Barks in several languages then, right?
She does,
yeah, that's impressive.
French, yeah, very, 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 very impressive. Yep.
The one thing I know about Australia, and this is the biggest stereotype of all time, but many people that listen to this show know of my friends that I met through the Pacers from Melbourne, the Aussies. They've been here for several games. They brought me Vegemite on several occasions. I pretend for the sake of, not offending them that I really like it, but I find it horrifically too salty and gross. Do you like Vegemite?
Yeah, I mean, then if you don't like it, you're not using it correctly. It's a
That's what they tell me.
A little bit on the bread, and you're golden. Yeah, okay. We love Vegemite in Australia.
Well, I have 9 pounds of it at home from their visit, so if you need any, you let me know. Also, they do bring Tim Tams, however, are awesome. Tim Tams, I'm down with, right?
They're amazing. Yeah, got to dunk them in your coffee though.
and listen. Maybe I could get some of the Tim Tams when I step out to go to the lake in Geneva so that I can check Switzerland off the box because it's all chocolate, right? I'm curious of this. Have you seen Ignite the Fire, which is the Heartland Film Festival film about the inaugural season of the Indy Ignite and the enthusiasm for them in this community?
Yep, I've seen it. It was very motivating and really, really impressively done, and really captured the season. So it made me even more excited to get started.
Are you excited to watch this on Thursday at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, the Modon Spike match between Indiana and Purdue? Because I do think that, here you have 2 college programs that are from right here in Central Indiana that are both nationally ranked. And again, I think, Coach, that kind of illuminates the enthusiasm and the skill set for this sport and this area. I'm assuming you're pretty excited to be able to experience that coming up Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have pretty close to a top 20 matchup right down the road in Indy, and in a historic place to watch volleyball for the first time. I think it absolutely shows the community that's been here for a really long time, but is building and growing and showing where volleyball stands in it. But it's going to be a great match. Indiana's having a really good start to their season, and I mean, Purdue is so historically a great team, so I'm pretty excited to watch it.
22nd ranked Indiana, 12th ranked Purdue. Yep. Lastly, Coach, for you guys, the schedule coming up here, because it's going to happen quickly now that you're here. I mean, you're going to basically jump into it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Draft coming up for you guys in a couple of weeks, then into camp in December, and then everything getting underway in January, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, we'll actually have an official schedule coming out later this month, and the draft will happen near the end of November. Then we'll start our training camp. Draft athletes will join us sort of as they finish their programs and get a little bit of rest, of course, because it's a crazy season for them as well. And then, yeah, early January, we have our first game.
I'm telling you, it's awesome. Folks need to come out and see it. I've mentioned before that Lekator Membramena is one of my favorite athletes in Central Indiana because the athleticism is incredible, Coach, and certainly look forward to it. Appreciate the time. Welcome to Indianapolis, all right?
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Again, joining us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line, she is the head coach of the Indy Ignite, Lauren Bertolacci, joining us on the show. Again, Thursday night, Monon Spike match at Gamebridge between Indiana and Purdue. Top 25 matchup, number 22 Indiana and number 12 Purdue. And then again, Gamebridge Fieldhouse website for ticket information and as well the film Ignite the Fire, which is about the Indy Ignite's inaugural season. Corbin, what do you think? Does it count? Do I have to go by her rules? Do I need to leave the airport and go out and do something in Geneva and then come back into the airport and go through security all over again for it to count to say that I've been to Switzerland?
Yes.
4 hours? You don't think 4 hours sitting and just like sitting and like reading the local paper or something counts?
No.
Oh, man. But, Gene, you got to go. I mean, now here's the other buzzkill of it all. And I'm not like some world traveler by any stretch of the imagination. But if you have a passport, and I'm like a kid in this regard, I want the stamp on the passport from the country, right? What is the total buzzkill of it all is if you go to Europe and you are going to countries that are all within the European Union now, it's like going to the U.S. If you go from Kentucky to Georgia to Tennessee, whatever, it's all the same. So that you only get your passport stamped once. And my understanding is in Switzerland, when I land there, they don't typically stamp the passport. You have to ask for it. But then once you go from there to elsewhere, you don't. So it's possible. If I'm flying all the way over there, I want the passport stamped, right? I mean, does that make me, am I too much a kid there, or is that a legitimate point?
That time I'll agree with you.
Well, thank you. So I'm 1 for 2 is what we're getting at, right? We'll come back. We will hand it over to John as part of the crossover brought to you by the good guys at Lovey Heating and Air. He is at a legendary establishment in Indianapolis today. We will find out what John's got cooking. We'll do it all next when we come back here to Aquarian Company on the Fan. Appreciate Coach joining me, Scott Agnes as well, Rob Blackman, Stephen Holder. Time for the crossover to chat with John about what he's got lined up. Brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com. 317-353-2141 is the telephone number. And, John, you get the pleasure of going to a number of different facilities and establishments around Central Indiana, and you are at one of the coolest and most historic today.
There's no doubt. If they're talking about history, Behringer's Tavern on South Meridian is right there among any of those establishments here in and around Central Indiana. We're back here all the time. Rob's going to join us a little bit later on. I love it, Jake, because I sit right here in the window. Like they have the garage door window open, and literally there's me and a short sidewalk, and then there's Meridian northbound right here and southbound. So I like it when people drive by. And I tell them to honk when they drive by this place. They honk, just to make sure people are listening.
I love it. We'll
see if we can get somebody to honk here as we're going. If you're driving down South Meridian right here, right around Pleasant Run Parkway, you'll see Behringer's Tavern. It's famous. I want you to honk. I want you to lay on the horn to make sure that we know that you're listening right there. No, it's a really fun thing to do. This is a great place, Jake. I know you've been here before, and you're a history buff here in Central Indiana and Indianapolis, and this has absolutely all of it.
140 years, burgers, tenderloins, you name it, right?
Dillinger and Capone and everybody been in this place before.
John, you mentioned last night, I thought you made a really interesting point about watching the Pacers last night. And, you know, speaking of history, I mean, historically, of late, we have seen the Pacers in terms of a center that we're used to seeing being able to draw a defense out with a high post. And I'm not saying we won't see it this year, but we certainly haven't seen it yet.
No, we haven't. It was interesting last night. I watched it for a long period of time. You were there. I watched it. And it was weird watching the ball stick as much as it did in one person's hands and not move around. I know it's the preseason, and I'll talk about this coming up after 3. But yeah, what's up?
There we go. Yes.
And it's weird. Then it's weird to see guys not give two craps defensively about D'ing up on the perimeter of a big guy.
Man, I'll tell you what.
Those guys can't shoot a lick right now.
I
Maybe
know.
they can one of these days, but Jake, I mean, I know it's preseason, but they don't look like they can shoot a lick.
No.
It doesn't look like all of a sudden you're going to be one.
And it's preseason, but, John, the reality is between Wiseman, Jackson, and Huff, there's been no separation from any of the three of them of like, well, this guy's going to be the guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. And that's going to be tough. I mean, it really is going to be tough if you're not capable of doing that. But, yeah, the whole ball movement thing. And I know that we're talking about games that absolutely don't matter. But those are two things that stuck out to me last night that are going to be really weird to watch once the season officially, Jake, is underway.
What's lined up on the big show?
Rick Venturi, 4 o'clock hour for everybody's listening enjoyment. Can't wait for that. Greg Rakestraw is coming up. And by the way, you saw Paul McCartney in Denver.
I did.
On the weekend, my daughter is in Des Moines, Iowa, and going to see McCartney tonight. She is actually in the same hotel as McCartney.
No way.
Because she got in the elevator, and a guy introduced himself holding his guitar as one of the guitarists, and she goes back and looks on her phone, and there he was in a picture with McCartney. So, yeah, they're in the same hotel with McCartnney. In Des Moines, Iowa, of all places. Is that a Hy-Vee thing?
The Days Inn? Are they staying at the Days Inn there in Des Moines?
Yeah, they're staying at the Super 8, right, overlooking the quarry, right off of 446.
That's right.
Hey, by the way, because you got homecoming weekend down in Bloomington, how much do you think for the Super 8 that overlooks that old quarry on 446 right next to Arlington Heights Elementary right there?
Well, heck,
how much
right
do you think
now.
it's going to be? I haven't looked.
It's got to be high right now with the top 5 Hoosiers, man. Are you kidding me? Like, bring it on. I mean,
They would be like 0-5, and it would still be like $700 a night for homecoming weekend back then. I can't imagine how much it is now.
Imagine how much it's going to be December 6th. We might have talked about this yesterday. Indiana-Louisville in basketball, downtown Indy, and then the Big Ten football championship at Lucas Oil Stadium that night, and presumably Indiana on a path to potentially get there, but we'll see, right? A lot of football to be played, but still. That could be electric coming up here in, just under 2 months.
Yeah, I talked to Matt Surface yesterday, and he's a guy that's been around as a player and then a fan. A lot of IU football in the past, and it was good to talk with him about that because those are the types of folks that are thrilled with the way this product looks right now. Those that have been a part of it forever and watching it under any circumstances, pretty special for those folks too, probably even more so.
Yeah, pretty awesome stuff. All right, John's going to be out at Behringer's on, again, South Meridian, been there for 140 years, it ain't going anywhere, and he's going to be there for the rest of the day. If you're going past, give him a honk. We'll hand it off to you in just a couple of minutes, all right, John?
You got it. Hey, by the way, that's my version of honk if you're horny right there. Remember that? You ever do that back in the day? Yeah. Honk if you're horny. You just honk.
I lived right off Allisonville Road. We did all kinds of stuff and getting people to honk. Are you kidding me? Right? 73rd and Allisonville.
Tuesday.
All right. We'll hand it off to you in just a little bit, and Rick Venturi will be with JMV coming up later. Somebody had asked earlier, by the way, I haven't given an update on two things that I probably left hanging in the balance. Number one, if I did not answer it, he had just mentioned the fact that I was in Denver to see Paul McCartney and the great Ubergate with Shannon, where I didn't know if I should be offended or not that she was like, can you just Uber from the airport? And I will say that Denver airport, by square footage, second largest airport in the world, and it is like 40 minutes from anywhere in Denver. Huge airport. The Uber was $135, but she did pick me up. She did pick me up. So I threw a temper tantrum. I acted like a 5-year-old, and she finally said, okay, fine, quit complaining, and she came and picked me up. Concert was really good. Show was good. As for Ubers and cars, somebody also asked about the saga that has been my car repair. It has been since the middle of August that my car had one, albeit under warranty, engine problem that I took in. They then kept discovering more and more and more within the engine, all of it under warranty, got that all taken care of. And then I drove it all of a half a day, and the engine blew up. So they are replacing the engine. It is under warranty. I'm getting a quote-unquote new engine. Whether that means brand new out of the box or that means rebuilt, I'm not certain. But coming up, they tell me that it's going to be done at the end of this week. So we shall see. But somebody had asked, and that is the latest on my car. All right, John's up next. Again, as he mentioned, Rick Venturi will be with them in the 4 o'clock hour. I want to again thank Scott Agnes for joining me today, Stephen Holder as well, and as well, Lauren Bertolacci, the new coach of the Indy Ignite. I thank you for listening to Query and Company.